Okay, here we go again. We're calling the committee meeting to order at 6:01 p.m. We'll go around the table and just say who's here from the board administration.
Carol Bites.
Mary Beth Kiesel, Director of Curriculum and Instruction. Mary Beth Torsha.
Connor Kurtz.
Rob Hurley.
Brian Doty. David Rathke.
All right, great. We'll have public comment at the end of the meeting. First up on the agenda, or second on the agenda, class size discussion in the context of the proposed budget. This is something that Mr. Rathke wanted on the agenda. I asked Mr. Small to be here, so hopefully he'll be here soon. Mr. Rathke, if you'd like to start.
Well, I guess before we get too in depth, I wanted to apologize. I think I took you by surprise at the board meeting the other night when I mentioned it. So, is the committee in agreement that we should be talking about class size?
Well, is this something the committee?
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure that was before we get on with this stuff. So I guess maybe the easiest maybe place to start would be for the elementary level. I would think. I think everybody got the email that Mrs. Torcha sent out Thursday or Friday, was it?
Thursday.
Just looking for a little direction as to where, because the original, the original recommendation from Mr. Small was to cut 11, I believe, on teachers, and that was just taking the overall elementary population divided by the number of.
Just 1 second, Mr. Small, if you want to come up to the board table, that would be perfect. We're on item 2, class size discussion in the context of the proposed budget. So if you'd like to speak to anything or any questions. Sorry to interrupt, Mr. Rathke.
So I think the original number was just taking the total elementary population divided by the number of, the class size that our maximum class size that our policy recommendation came up with the number of teachers, and just went from there. Of course, the issue with that obviously is we have to break out each school. So once that was done, that number did come down, and the recommendation coming from the finance committee was 8 to reduce by. Now, as Mrs. Torcha brought up, the question is, where did the 8 come from? I guess if you do the math, some of the classes are a little shaky as to how you can get that maximum number out of there. So I don't know what's the best way to do it. To go by grade level and students. Would that be the easiest? I think actually, if I pull up the maybe I should pull up your attachment from the elementary class size. I think you sent out. Yeah. I think you gave a couple of examples of what. Everybody did get that, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Everyone on the committee,
So I think it gave like a list our policy, and it gave you a couple different options for each, for both AEC as well as DEC and NEC. And then of course, obviously the one variable that we don't have the answer to right now, of course, is what will kindergarten, what will the size eventually be, speaking, I did tour Amity last week, and Mr. Miller said that they were on track. Last summer, they got about 18 people signed up over the summer. They're actually right at the same level where they were last year. So depending on what comes in the summer, they can do the same exact number, or right there. That's what they are this year.
Well, I know in terms of these numbers here, I'm wondering for the projected class sizes for the next school year under the proposed budget, that's taking into account the enrollment currently, or when these numbers were.
Correct.
Okay.
That's what we can base it upon.
Our enrollment district-wide year to year is down 100 students from last year. Is that correct? If I've looked at the numbers correctly?
I think if we looked at the numbers, but not necessarily specifically at the elementary
Yeah,
level. And
across the
certainly
entire-
not at Birdsboro, Monocacy.
Okay.
Those numbers have stayed pretty consistent. If we lose a couple on the Amity side, we end up picking them up on the Birdsboro, Monocacy side. That's a trend that I happened to see for just this past month.
Okay.
So, I mean, I think a couple of them are pretty, you know, obviously there are some cuts that can be made. And, you know, I think some of them are pretty obvious. Well, Mrs. Fortune, why don't you go over the 5 cuts that you have, any that you can.
The 5 cuts that I have identified right off the bat is that there would be 1 teacher that would be reduced in first grade at Amity Elementary Center because we have 4 classes going into 5. 4 kindergartens that would be moving into 5 classes of first grade. So right there we would reduce 1. Class sizes would be at 19.2, which is below your guidelines, but if we reduced 1 more teacher, then first grade would be sitting at 25.6 students, which means there would be more students sitting 26 to a class than there would be 25. So right there's 1. The next grade that I see is 3rd grade at Amity Elementary Center. Again, it is the number of classes that would be going into it. We can lose a teacher, so we would go from 6 teachers to 5 teachers. That suggested class size would be right at the guideline, which is 20. Not in the middle, but if we went and took another teacher away, then there would be 25 students sitting in each class, which would be over the suggested class size. And then the next position that I have identified is 5th grade at Amity Elementary Center. If we kept the 6 teachers, the class sizes would be 20.8, which would be well below the class size, suggested class size, but if we remove 1 there, with 5 teachers, we would be sitting at approximately 25 students per class, which is right under the 26. So there's 3 at Amity Elementary Center. You could, for argument's sake, in 4th grade at Amity Elementary, if you kept all 6 teachers, the class sizes would be around 22 students per class. If you took 1 teacher and reduced 1 additional teacher there would be 2 classes would be sitting with 26 students and 3 classes with 27 students to begin the year, which is above, like on and above. So all the rest of the classes would go up to 27. So 4th grade to me was a gray area. Moving on to Monocacy and Birdsboro. At Monocacy Elementary Center, we have 7 second grades currently. There are 6 first grades that will fill into that classroom, into that grade level. We could lose a teacher there and class sizes would be at 21. There would be the 4th teacher. And the next one that I identify is 5th grade at Birdsboro Elementary. If we went from 6 classes to 5 classes, the average class size would be 24.4. Again, their 4th grade numbers at Birdsboro are identical to Amity's, and if you removed an additional class there, you would again have 2 classes with 26 students and 3 with 27 students. So I found 5. There were 2 if you really want to play with the numbers. The rest of the numbers taking an additional class away are putting your numbers above. You know, if we go back and look at Amity Elementary Center, if we took 2 classes, those children, there would be 25.6. If we looked at Amity grade level 2nd grade and removed a class, we would be starting the year with 28 students. 3rd grade, we already identified as 1, but if you took a second one, you'd be sitting with 25 students in a class. 1st grade, if you removed a teacher at Monocacy, there would be 26.8 students. 2nd grade, if you removed an additional teacher instead of just removing 1, you'd be sitting at 25.2. 3rd grade, if you removed a class, you'd be sitting with 28.8 students in a class. So that's where I'm at a quandary as to, I can clearly identify 5, but I need some direction. Because if you're going to be putting that many students into a classroom, which I absolutely do not recommend, I need to know from this committee or from the board as to where.
Yeah, I think ultimately whatever's discussed here tonight is going to have to go to the full board because I know the Finance Committee has their recommendation and it's going to come to the board anyway. So I don't want to necessarily discuss anything. Mr. Miller?
May I chip in?
Yes.
On that? Since we're talking about numbers, you know, Mrs. Bites and Mr. Ratkin, and you yourself, Mr. Person, spent a lot of time in the meeting. You've seen how packed it is. When we're at 24, 25 in a room, you put 27 in there, there is no room. You might as well forget about learning centers and all the differentiated instruction that we do and all the appealing to different learning styles that we do that helps each individual child be a good student and learn at their own pace. 27 in a classroom is going to be jammed. And that's why I hope we just work with the 3 retirements and not replacing them in Amity, because I think going beyond that is going to be extremely difficult. For those of you who have had kids and grandkids, have you ever been to a birthday party with 20 first graders in a room? I mean, it's kind of like herding cats, you know, so trying to do education with 24 or 26 is almost impossible. I mean, that's why I would really urge you to keep especially the lower grades, as small as possible.
Thank you, Mr. Lee.
I mean, this is going to, again, go to the full board tonight.
Well, sure.
Yeah.
That's why, I mean, we had a recommendation from the Finance Committee.
Yeah.
I think we should do a recommendation from that. And it could be the same. It could be 8, but I mean, I don't see the 8 coming here myself.
I mean, what was that, like the Finance Committee was making that recommendation just based on the average pool of students in these schools?
No, that was the original letter. And then once that was broken out, and I think from correct me if it's wrong, I mean, the full knowledge, I mean, they knew a couple of these classes would be pushing over.
It was simple math based on your administrative guidelines and the projected enrollment.
I mean, we saw some of those pictures at the last committee meeting where these rooms were packed. I mean, desks were right next to each other.
Functional capacity of the classroom is not for 26, 27, 28 desks.
Right.
I mean, you know, the way those classrooms are set up, I mean, at one time, I mean, I guess if it was strictly desks, then I don't think that's an issue. But, you know, we have stations in there. We have computer stations. We have...
You have reading center. You have to have that.
You know, and now with you know, there are newer methods of teaching, like math, or teaching in more of a group orientation. Different groups are set up. Is that correct?
Yes.
So there's they have different. They get put together in groups to do these math problems. So if it was just you had the desks lined up and the teacher standing in front of them, you know, yeah, I don't think 27 is an issue. Have all these different learning centers that we have in there. And I mean, I was over there last week. It's difficult. Could it, you know, and all these questions, could they be done? Sure. I mean, our administration will do what the board says, and they'll try to make it work the best they can. But you know, the question is, you know, some people might say, well, put 27, that's just one extra kid, but really now you're affecting 27 kids. You're not affecting one kid. You're affecting a whole class, and that's 27.
We're just going to need to be told as to what grade level is going to be sitting above the recommended class ranges. So, I mean, I was able to identify 5 easily, but I would not be able to. I would not be able to identify 3 more.
Okay, so when this comes up to the committee report tonight at the board meeting, a question that will need to be resolved if we do go with the recommendation from the Finance Committee at a full board level, which classes should...
I mean, I think it needs to be reconciled somewhere or another because we're at odds. If that was just simple basic math, I think we're at odds.
I think this should be the recommendation of the committee, though.
think we all, know the financial constraints we're under and that burden, but I don't know.
Well, my question would be, what is the magic number?
Yeah.
How is 24 necessarily different from 23 versus 22 versus 21 versus 25? And what is that sweet spot?
Excuse me, can you turn your mics on? We can't hear this back here.
I don't know. Scott, where's Scott? Is the whole system set up?
No, I don't think that.
Do you need to turn behind me?
And the-
I can get them out very easily. Thank you.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Okay, all right. Committee members, please just, when you're not speaking, if you can turn off your microphone to conserve battery so that lasts the length of the meeting, that would be very helpful. Okay, so how do we want to move forward?
Well, if, Mr. Kurtz, if you have a recommendation as to what other 3 teachers that we want to cut.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a recommendation. I'm sure the finance committee, with the math, I don't have a recommendation for that.
So, I mean, then are we saying that we're good with 5, or is that what we're saying?
I think that's what I'm saying.
That's what
I
I'm
think
saying.
I'm taking the recommendation of the administrator.
I think I have to yield to their expertise. Sorry. I think I have to yield to the expertise of the administration on this one, only because what we discussed last time around. I mean, I don't see functionally how. I just see it being a mess in elementary school.
Mr. Small, do you have any idea what the financial ramifications of eliminating 5 full-time equivalent positions as opposed to 8 would be? How much that would cost us?
I think that's this committee's discussion. Aren't we just discussing the recommendation from this committee?
This factors into my thinking on the recommendation, and to be prepared to vote. I'd like to know how it will affect all of our programming. I mean, we do not ignore money
Wouldn't that
in
be
the
the
curriculum
discussion we
committee.
want to have with the full board then?
Absolutely, but there's no harm in us having as much information as we
Well, I think
can.
that this committee should vote on this recommendation.
I'd like to know, in order to determine how I'd like to vote, I'd like to know
Well,
this
maybe
information.
Mr. Small, while before the meeting tonight, you get a little bit of time, maybe you could kind of crunch those numbers. Was that asking too much of you?
But our consideration is the class sizes and the impact on curriculum and instruction. You're branching over into finance to make art. We need to look at these numbers, and I look at them and I say, you know what, I really don't want these classes any bigger than this. Is there a magic number? No, they're kids. And these are the kids, this is the sizes that I'm comfortable with. When you look at, it's a full evaluation, you take one more away, we're up in the 30 range, it's not acceptable to me. As a curriculum and instruction committee, that's our concern.
What range is comfortable to you?
I like the recommendations that the administration has provided.
And
And she showed us full. If we take one more, then I'm not comfortable with 26.6. I like the recommendation with 6
The
sections.
suggested class size is 22 to 26
for 4th through 5th
for
grade.
4th through 5th grade.
I'm just looking at the whole model that she created.
And we're right in there for
I'm not comfortable
4th
with
and
going to the
6th
next number. I like it right where we're at.
All right.
For all of these, I've studied these and I like them, and I don't see where we can squeeze anymore because the consequence is here. If we cut another kid for
I'm
3rd grade.
recommending one here and here.
Okay, so the administration can you again for tonight list the positions to 5 that this committee seems inclined to recommend to the board?
Maybe the only other variable is that we don't know yet is going to be kindergarten. We won't know the full enrollment until probably later this summer. Now, at that point, I mean, could we still cut a teacher? My comment to the finance committee was, yeah, we certainly can, but if we find ourselves all of a sudden with a very low number in kindergarten, my pet peeve, wouldn't it be great if we could then have one at-risk class, maybe over at Monocacy? We already have that, we have that teacher already on staff.
Well, I mean, that would be a discussion, and the board would have to vote on approving that.
Absolutely.
But, all right. So, Mrs. Wersha, can you again say the positions so I can report to the full board tonight, the 5 that this committee, they're right here?
One teacher, one teacher, one teacher, one teacher, one teacher. So there
Here?
they are. Nope, it's
First,
just
third,
minus
and
one.
fifth
Minus
at
one,
A.
Minus one.
Okay.
Here's another one, minus
Fifth at
one.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, would somebody like to move that recommendation? I think there should be a on-the-record
We
vote.
should vote on it?
Well, somebody needs to make a motion to make that recommendation.
I'll make a vote.
Okay, so Mr. Rathgeb is motioning to recommend to the full board that we curtail 5 positions. Okay, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, seconded by Mr. Doty. Mrs. Bites?
Yes.
Mr. Rathgeb?
Yes.
Mr. Doty?
Yes.
And Mr. Kurtz, no. All right, we're going to move on to item 3, preliminary high school course approval form. Mrs. Kiesel.
But we also have to talk about
high
high
school.
school size as well as middle school size.
Oh, that was only elementary that we talked about? Oh,
I don't have.
okay.
I think middle school is relatively easy to explain. So the one cut would bring us down to how many teams? 6th grade?
Well, it would,
Or it would
11 teachers.
What was the question?
So, I mean, so in middle school, what the possible cut was 1 from 6th grade, which would change the number of teams we had. I think instead of usually 2 teams.
well, right now we have 3 teams of 4. So by cutting 1, we'd end up with 11 teachers. So we wouldn't be able to have an even number of teachers on the teams. What I was going to do was look at the population of students coming from 5th grade and determine then how many teams would work best in 6th grade. So for example, if I have a large number of honors students and accelerated students coming, then I could probably have a larger number of teams because I would want them to be spread out. If I have a smaller number, I don't want to have as many teams because I don't want there to be a team that has no honors and accelerated students and then they'd be lopsided. So my idea was to take a look once I see what we have coming, which I'll know in a few weeks, and then determine how many teams I would like to have in the size. I definitely want to go, I don't want to go any bigger for team size if I don't need to, but I would prefer to go smaller. So maybe 3 teams of 3 and a team of 2, or 2 teams of 4 and a team of 3. Those are the ones that I'm kind of thinking about.
What is the virtue of the team?
Well, on a team, every student has the same teachers for their core subjects. So when a student is struggling, all the teachers come together and they can talk about how to meet that student's needs. A parent is consistently dealing with the same teachers the entire year. If they're better able to monitor behavior, social, emotional kinds of issues, and then the teams work together on interdisciplinary activities. So, for example, when they're doing measurement in math, they also might be doing it in science, and then they may be doing the same type of activity, and it carries over between the two classes.
Is there a major difference between, like, if you have 2 7th grade teams, what Team A is doing and Team B? Is there a major
No,
difference?
because they have the same curriculum. But it's just a matter of how they might reach that goal. So one teacher might do a certain project and pull in the science teacher on their team, but then another team might do something different, but they're all reaching the same goal because they have the same curriculum.
Okay.
I mean, I think we can't deny that the team approach at the middle school has performed exceptionally well as far as, I see my mic's almost to cut out from last time, to be honest. So, has performed exceptionally well. But I mean, obviously, where are we at in the state?
I believe that we are in the top 14% in in language arts and 7% in math, or it's the other way around, without seeing it. But we're at the top in the state, and our school performance profile score is an 89.9, which is
So,
very nice.
and you know, the full discussion that we're going to be having, you know, before next year's budget time is, you know, do we want to go to a junior high model or a hybrid of some kind of junior and, you know, junior high model in there, and maybe that's in 8th grade or 7th grade, but keep the teaming approach in the middle school approach in the 6th grade, or include 5th over there, whatever the case may be. But that's a discussion, I think, a lengthy discussion that we need to have. So, you know, the question is, and maybe Jenny can explain a little better. I know you mentioned that there was some issues. Since we cut 4 teachers last year, I know that the teachers now 7th and 8th grade aren't all on one team. They're divided, teaching both 7th and 8th grade.
Yes. Yeah, we have one split team now. We actually lost 5 teachers, but 4 of them are core teachers, and the other one was a reading teacher that we had. On that split team now, we have teachers who are teaching both 7th and 8th grade, and then those students are not as spread out as they are on the other teams. So because there are only, we have 3 8th grade classes and 2 7th grade on that team. So those 2 7th grade classes, there's not a whole lot of area for them to go. So they travel together a lot, or the mix isn't so much different. Whereas on a team of 5 teachers, like is typical, you might be able to spread out your students a little bit more. And then of course those teachers are teaching anywhere from 2 different classes at a time to up to 5. So some of those teachers have 5 separate preps depending on what it is that they're teaching and the needs of their students. Like our math teacher on that team, for example, he's teaching an Algebra 1 course that is an honors course, accelerated Algebra 1 course, a Math 7 course, a pre-algebra course, and a regular Math 8 course. So he's actually teaching quite a number of different things. My English teacher on that team is teaching a reading class, a strategic reading class, an honors language arts class in 7th grade, and a regular language arts class in 7th grade. So although obviously they are more than capable of doing that, that's a lot of changing around and doing for one teacher, and then managing both 8th grade and the expectations of those 8th graders as opposed to 7th graders, because they are 2 completely different groups of students, even though they don't seem to be. I know my 8th grade teachers have said that in this year teaching 7th grade, that they're a very different group of students. Their needs are much different.
How many 7th grade teams do we have?
There are 2, and there are 2
Including?
8th grade teams, and then there's the one split team that's both 7th and 8th. So I don't know how you want me to classify that exactly. There's 2 that are solely 7th grade, 2 that are solely 8th grade, and 1 that is split between 7th and 8th.
And there's no way to rearrange the teachers, so you only have 2 7th grade and 2 8th grade, but with additional teachers to cover that extra load?
You could, but then you end up with a different scenario where you have much less of a team concept. So if, say, I don't know if you have, I'm trying to think of how long ago when you were in the middle school, but I don't know if you remember, there was a team called the Phantoms team, and then after that there was a team the year after that was, they changed it up a little bit, and it was the same kind of thing, but the teachers then kind of worked with more than one team, and the kids didn't all have the same teachers, so then they couldn't really talk about everyone in a meeting or get together and discuss things if kids were struggling and come up with a plan, because not everyone had them. So you had to kind of find out which teachers those kids had and then work with them. And it just logistically is more difficult. You're getting more toward the whole junior high idea, which I've presented, and I don't think is necessarily a bad thing when you're talking about kids starting to transition toward high school. But especially for my 6th graders, I think that the team concept is really important, because they're transitioning from elementary. They need that closer relationship with their teachers, and their teachers to be more hands-on with them as they're moving into adolescence.
Okay, so I want to go back to the discussion in the context of the proposed budget. Mr. Rathgeb, what goal do you want to get to in this discussion?
Well, my only concern going forward was we know we got a model that works at the middle school. We did have some substantial cuts last year over there, and we don't yet know how that's affected the middle school. So my only concern is we're going to cut another teacher without seeing, you know, the total end of year results from the middle school. That was my concern.
I have a question here for Mr. Small. The 8 teachers that the Finance Committee recommended, and Mr. Radcliffe, you're in the Finance Committee too, right?
Right.
What was the breakdown in terms of elementary versus middle versus high?
It was 8 elementary, 1 middle, 2 high school. So
that
11.
That was 11.
11.
From what I thought we were moving on, the proposed budget includes 8, not 11. Is that right, Mr. Small?
Preliminary budget is 8, 1 and 2.
1 and 2, 1 at the middle school and 2 at the high school, and at the elementary school it's 5.
8.
It was 8. The preliminary budget is built on 8.
8 at the elementary school, then 2 at the, no, I'm asking for the total overall. 11. Okay, I thought the Finance Committee moved away from that. That was
It was originally 11 total at the elementary.
Okay.
Correct.
So, okay, thank you for clarifying.
So I mean, this committee feels that, you know, that they're fine with cutting the 1 teacher at the middle school, then that's what you know, we recommend.
I don't think we have enough information. Mrs. Rexroth, I'm not sure if I'm out of the loop, or I got a report from you by teacher and average class size. Did we get, or can we get some information about the teams, how everything folds out in teams and the impact of cuts, what a cut would do to the team, so we can see it? We hear you, I do hear you, but like I need to see it poorly somewhere. Can you illustrate for us the team concept, or is there some way from this spreadsheet that you sent that I could put it all together so I can hear what you're saying?
I feel like in all of the things that I've sent, there has to be something that, I mean, no, that's fine. In the PowerPoint presentation that I did share with the curriculum committee that I presented the 1 teacher. It doesn't, I mean, obviously I never want to lose a teacher, but of all of the different ideas that I presented or the different structures, it doesn't make a huge impact because you are losing, I believe from what you just discussed with elementary, you would be cutting a 5th grade. Is it like, how should I explain? You could cut a 5th grade position. I have 12 teachers right now teaching 6th grade. You'd be cutting it down to 11. I believe with the number that you have coming to me, if you divided that by 11, you would fall in your class size range. So I
guess my concern is that we can look at this spreadsheet and we can see that this teacher has, you know, 11.5 average. I'm afraid that the temptation is going to be to just say, well, let's just cut that teacher. And I don't think we're getting the full impact. Can we see it the way?
I believe from your looking at your PowerPoint presentation, if you would reduce, it says smaller teams would be made up of fewer teachers, class size is around 26. So if you took the number of students and divided it by the 11 teachers opposed to 12, Mrs. Rexroth is saying class sizes would be about 26 for 6th grade.
Okay.
For every class, because within other than maybe if you're in accelerated math, there might be fewer students in that classroom that might be served at the on-level math class. And obviously the students who are receiving, you know, additional math help, those classes may be a little bit smaller, if I'm speaking correctly.
Yes. Yeah, the breakdown that I had sent a while ago, and I will send it to you again as soon as my computer boots up, that broke it down by period. The whole point behind me doing that was just to show you, because I know when I originally sent the document I think you're looking at now, you could see all of those smaller numbers and say, well, right. Why is this happening? So I had sent a document that broke it down by every period of the day and how many students are in each class. You could see how they're all separate.
So I just need to look for that then.
Yeah, no, and I'll send it to you again so that you could see it.
Thank you.
No, that's the one I think she might be looking at now, but I'm not sure. I'll send it to all of you.
This was helpful. It was the Excel
the
I mean-
master schedule numbers.xls
That's what I was looking at, because it has the averages
Uh-huh.
in there for each.
by teacher, yeah. I kind of thought we should
Well, there was
have
another
something.
one that was by teacher.
This is by teacher,
It's,
alphabetical.
it's much more complicated to divide the numbers evenly at the middle and high school level opposed to at the elementary. Because the children stay in their homeroom at the elementary level. So when they start their day, they're starting their day as a whole, and they're staying in class for, especially in kindergarten, first and second grade, for reading, right? They're not changing classes. When we get to the older class sizes, we do start to move around for math in grades 3, 4, and 5. But again, usually the upper level, a lot of those classes stay pretty even with our advanced math, and then we probably have a second advanced math, at least my experience at Amity, and then we had like 2 middle groups, but all of those classes were pretty even with the exception of our below basic math group at the elementary level. So you'll see a little bit of change there. That's the only time that we really model our classes after a middle school or a high school approach. But within the middle school, because they're functioning as an entire team, and because now in 7th and 8th grade you have to teach by a certificate, grades kindergarten through 6th grade, elementary certification covers you.
Okay.
But when you get to 7th grade, you have to be specific to math, to science, to social studies. So it's not as easy to just divide the students up. Now you have to make sure that you have the proper person, and geography. There's a lot of different classes that are now being taught that weren't being taught at the elementary level. So that's where the class sizes get a little skewed, and they don't run at the same level necessarily as what our elementary do, but it's all because of inputting kids, and then kids who are coming out of those homes, like if they all sat together, they would sit around 26, but because we have students who are functioning higher or lower in reading and or math, they're getting pulled out of maybe a science, not a science, but a social studies or an encore class to get extra intervention in the area that they need reading or math. So some numbers then start to look lower because these kids are getting a double dose of that subject that they're struggling with. That's the best that I can explain it, other than the fact of the whole teaming approach and the whole idea of teaming is the fact that you're a pod of students. You see all the same teachers, not necessarily at the same time, but you're seeing all the same teachers, and then those teachers can talk about those kids collaboratively and say, hey, how's Johnny working out in math class? Because I'm seeing that he's not doing his homework for science and he's struggling, he's putting his head down. You know, is anybody else seeing these things? And so that's what the teaming approach provides.
Yeah, I'm just not getting a good sense of the teaming to be able to make an informed decision. I was just wondering if there was some other way to illustrate it. I'll look through your materials.
One other question though, so is the teaming actually occurring on that split? Because I thought you said they had problems with timing to actually get together.
Yes, they do have trouble getting together as a team because since they teach different grade levels, they don't have their duty period or their prep period during the same time necessarily. So it's easy for the other 7th and 8th grade teams to say, you know, we need to get together for 15 minutes and talk about student X. Let's get together third period because we all have our prep. Whereas with those students on that team, if they want to talk about a student, maybe only 3 of them are available because the other 2 are teaching the other grade. So they're not available at that time. So if they want to get together, they have to put it off until after school, or I can provide them time during the school day, during the activity period at the end, which I try to do every so often. But with losing those 5 teachers, we weren't able to schedule team meetings this year, and that used to be something that was scheduled in the regular schedule as a duty for the teachers. We weren't able to do that because we had lost 5 teachers, and so we needed the teachers for duties, and it wouldn't work out. So we, during the activity period in the day, get coverage for those teachers so they can get together and meet. And some of the teachers then meet longer into from the 2:30 to 3 o'clock time then as well.
So I think the middle school is the most kind of, to me, nebulous one to try and get my arms around, like you said. So maybe just we can move on to the high school.
Okay.
And
And I did send that document, by the way, I just sent it.
Yeah.
So
Maybe we should tour, we should go over.
you certainly are more than welcome.
Sometime.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, we're voting on the budget, but it's not final until the end of June. Most
Right.
likely until we actually do the final vote.
Right.
So, with the high school, we've had, numerous conversations about the 34 classes that are under 10 students. So, I think that's been kind of driving the conversation to eliminate two teachers. But in reality, I think we need to put that aside as kind of like a smokescreen, really. Mr. McKnight had shown me the classes on Friday for this coming year, so he has sent that out, I think, to the entire board. You can see on the master list here where now we're down to 2 under 10.
It's 5, but it will be 2 once we kind of work through with a couple of departments about merging some classes.
Okay. So, there's no question that this current year, we certainly had numerous classes under 10, which, some can be explained, and I don't think we really need to get into that, but there was definitely, that they should have sought approval for that from the board. No question about that. So the question is, and as I said, administration we can certainly cut 2 teachers from high school. What that would do would either raise our number of students in our core classes, English, math, or we have to eliminate some electives or AP classes. So if we're going to cut, what are we cutting? Or what class sizes are we increasing? Is kind of the question. So I hope you had a chance to look at the master schedule.
I have a question for Mr. McKnight. Why is yearbook a class?
Yearbook's a class. Yearbook 1 is they're taking photos, getting out, writing the stories, kind of highlighting all the information that goes into the yearbook that makes it a special story. Yearbook 2 and 3 are where kids move into the editor level. So think of it kind of like a production company or a publishing company. Students that get into 2 or 3 are guiding the younger kids and making more of the decisions that go into the book.
What's the academic nature of the program?
Well, I think it's an English language arts program and it's a writing program. I think ultimately it would be like any of our activities, kind of a la Career Center, where you're actually getting hands-on, authentic learning to develop it. And I think that's the best kind, actually.
Is that standard protocol in high schools? To have the yearbook as a class?
Mixed. I think that it's a standard protocol to have a level 1 and then level 2 and 3, so to speak, for credit. It varies between schools. Sometimes I look at our situation and the pieces that we have are unique and interesting, and we're in the lead on some of those ideas. If there are students who want to write and publish and do that kind of work, it's a fantastic opportunity to be involved.
It offers opportunities for burgeoning young photographers too, right? To cover sports events and write captions or stories about them.
Speaking from my experience at the high school and the owner of a variety of high school yearbooks, and perhaps this has changed, I hope it has, but there is not narrative writing in the yearbooks, it's just captions. It almost seems that this is an activity, but we're giving academic credit for it, and I'm not sure. I know in some schools and some activities, interest is waning in things like this, and it's difficult to get the manpower really to do it. And I almost have a feeling that's what happened here. So it became a class to get more students interested, so we had a yearbook. I think we need to keep activities separate from the curriculum, and I thought that for a long time, but I thought this was a good opportunity to bring it up.
If you don't mind, I can't speak to what the motive was before, but as we try to develop these pathways and these authentic learning opportunities through these pathways, I think it's, what I'm really asking for is the year to do the deep dive next year to really make good decisions about how we're going to go and how we're going to develop the pathways. If we cut these pieces now, then I think we're going to have a challenge to deliver some of these things. And I'm going to talk a little about the internship, which is part of that key concept.
Quick question. Question for Mr. Small. You said there was 1 teacher being eliminated from the high school under the Finance Committee's budget. 2. There was 1 from middle school. Okay. Has more thought been given to offering courses? I see on the spreadsheet we were provided there will be rotations for a few courses. Is it possible to do that with a greater number of courses?
Yeah, so a good example would be, it's very likely at this point that AP European is going to be on a 2-year rotation. So we've kind of gone through each of those pieces, and right now things, you can see the populated number of opportunities. Some are foundational, built upon a need to happen consecutively, and some can happen in kind of a disjointed or singleton way. And where that's possible, we look at that and have had that conversation with department chairs.
If we were to reduce 2 staff, would it be possible to add more of those courses into that 2-year rotation?
I'm sure the answer is yes. Let me say that. However, I mean, anything we do, we will adapt and adjust to.
Yes.
Would it be best and allow kids maximum opportunity? The answer is no.
Can you tell us about the publishing design, class number 644? See, there's only 7 projected for that. And what is involved with that one?
644.
Under marketing.
Also rely on my wonderful assistant, Mrs. Weber. She's a little more familiar, perhaps. But is this one in the business department? Yeah. So this is a desktop publishing course, okay, where you can learn how to create desktop items through Publisher. I mean, that's essentially what it is.
It was one that was added back in this year, so it was not currently running this year. So it was one that they were attempting in the things to increase interest and would more kids take it. But as Mr. McKnight identified, the yearbook classes really fit a lot more of that, what they want to do in that publishing, because it's the same kind of concepts, just again, a more applicable role, because they're producing an actual yearbook. And I think that's what the business department is looking to add some more courses that may have more interest, but they didn't have the buy-in of the yearbook or the other piece of the popularity per se, as potentially the yearbook piece did. So it's a course that, you know, I think the skills learned in the publishing design course can be incorporated in the yearbook and vice versa. Right now, they're looking like 2 different courses because 2 different departments have proposed them and are running them. But
yeah, is there some sort of merging we can do with that one? I guess
we're very much.
But that's not in your proposal.
I missed it. I missed the 7.
Okay.
So that's the you see the red marks next to the other ones.
That's why I was wondering why you saved
good catch by you.
Well,
thank you.
And that is the one department that we have not been able to sit down with yet.
So that's probably that is a class.
Yeah, well, we'll continue to merge and combine, you know, based on teacher recommendation. And they've seen
Yeah,
some
I like
areas
you're
where
getting that, but I wouldn't
Yeah.
think that we could, you know,
Absolutely. I think so.
cross-curricular or something. So you're going to look at 644.
Yes.
I'm looking
Because
at
that's an estimated 7.
I'm looking at class sizes here for core classes, and I know sometimes I need to remind myself that we need to separate elementary from the higher levels because the students are entirely different, and I will admit that my attention is mostly on the upper level because I'm more familiar with that at this point. I guess I'm equally familiar because I've been through that too, but it's at the forefront of my mind. And looking at the class sizes, they do not seem to be too extreme. I'm looking here at biology. They range from 19 to 23 students. Chemistry, 18 to 23 students. Physics, 17 to 22 students. I don't think these class sizes, I think they could go up, quite frankly, and with students getting ready for college, they're going to have classes with 60 students. So I don't have a problem with the 2 recommendations from the Finance Committee.
What are the 2 recommendations?
May I just respond? Because one thing I want you to look at when you see these numbers, you need to put about a 10-student range on that because the way scheduling dynamics fall. You know, some kids can't have it that period because they have something else that is a singleton that will only work once. So where you see 21, that could go as high as 26, it could come down as low as 15. So that is the mean, for sure.
But that can all, for the core classes, they take precedence over any of the elective courses, right? Because students need to get those classes to graduate. So they'll find they have to be in the schedule.
I agree. And all I will say to you is, as you probably remember when you were a student, that the core requirements are what you have to do. The encore are what you love to do. And so what are the drivers for a student in what their passion is in this developing secondary level, the high school level? it's relevant that you have the encore offerings.
Okay.
Another question, Mr. McKnight. In the AP Physics section, I see that we got the pound num error in a couple of them. I'm kind of assuming that just meant you weren't proposing those. 422, for example, like we had a rounding thing there going. Yep, so that means. Or would AP2 Physics Lab mean you're going to put that on an annual, a biannual basis? What are we thinking about AP Physics 2/Lab?
Right now, there's only one student signed up for it, so we know it won't run next year. Is it something that we may continue to offer if we have a population? Potentially, but we don't know what the population is going to grow into. So right now, anywhere, if you see the 0 in the sections number, that means it's not running, and that's what gives the error of the pound number.
Got it, thank you.
Yeah.
I should have done that then.
That's okay. And one point on the labs too, the total number with some of the science labs, the hard part where we get into is how is it going to fill, as Mr. McKnight said, but also what's there's the space to be able to do. So if you're running certain classes in certain numbers, like chemistry right now, there's 69 signed up for it, there's 23 class size. If you take it down, like, yeah, you can have larger, but how's it going to fill, and how is it really going to be effective, and do we have the materials for it? All of those pieces, come into play that will adjust, but what's really going to be the best experience, especially, in the core courses and with the labs and the opportunities that they have. Then sometimes the number that signed up, again, how the divide breaks out and how the numbers work, it might look like this is the way it's going to be, but again, the minimum and maximum, there's going to be certain periods that fill fully, and we'll shuffle a lot, but you're still going to get, a range, very much so.
And to drive back to the conversation we were having a couple of meetings ago about functional capacity. So the labs really can handle no more than the mid-20s. Okay, that's how much lab space there is. In addition, to make the point that Mrs. Weber brought up, that if you drive up classes to a higher number, then you need to have books in students' hands of 30 students at that point. So there's a hidden cost to some of those decisions. And I think a rule of thumb for you would be around $100 a book for a student. So if you're going to drive those numbers up into 30s, you have to have that availability for them in that class set. So.
But we don't really know at this point what those costs are. We don't know. I know when I was at the high school, there were piles of textbooks on pallets. So we don't really know that outcome at this point, if we need to or not, right? Like, we may need to, but we're not.
We have
sure.
a sense now with this schedule. You'll have a sense of how many more we need. So when we meet with the department chairs, we know what ran last year, how many books there were to count. And I will share this with you, that it's been a long time since the high school has bought books in any kind of rotation or cycle. So many of the books that we're using are circa 1999, 2000. The wear and tear is not very good. So there's as you talk about the fiscal cliff or some other issues, there's a cost coming down the road for us to put the resources in the classroom. And we can look at alternative ways to do that. Classroom sets, classroom library set.
I know when I was a student at DBHS, a lot of teachers created their own packets, and they used ancillary materials, not necessarily textbooks. And it seems like that seems to be the direction that
I think they do that now.
moving.
I mean, there's definitely a lot of that, Mr. Kurtz. The piece that we have to be careful of, we just have to be smart about how we approach it. I think that there are clearly some storylines where kids leave textbooks in their locker. Teachers having a classroom set, a classroom library, and some of the materials that they've discussed are very important. But also, I think the opportunity, I would caution us against online textbooks, because they expire in 6 years, and then you're getting hit again for the cost. There's not that much difference. The really good thing about it ultimately is they're highly interactive. So just something, it's a hidden expense that rolls over every 6 years automatically.
And don't forget the comment about our student population declining. Really, if you look at the numbers, it's not affected high school. Over the past 10 years, it's been pretty static. That might not be an issue for you, and also it might not be an issue that we're the second highest student teacher ratio within 25 miles. I mean, it could be the highest if that's what you want to go.
That's correct.
But that might not be an issue. So, I think Mr. McKnight has a vision for the high school, and I do believe that down the road there will be some opportunities for us to, whether we want what focus we want the high school to go. And if that's what the decision's made, I think there are some ways for us to save some money. My only thought, my only concern is that with Mr. McKnight being so new, I don't think it's fair to hand him 2 cuts to make now with everything else that he's trying to accomplish there. I think that's a step back for the high school.
We're waiting for Mr. to
I'm still trying to swallow books from the late 90s. That's pretty incredible. My thing is that we have to somehow reconcile the difference between what the Finance Committee is recommending and what I'm hearing from our administration, which is a difference of 5 at this point, right? Am I missing something there?
Well, we didn't really, there's a middle school we haven't really talked about fully, and there's a high school which we're talking about now. But this is going to be a full board discussion tonight, without a doubt, because we're going to have a discussion on the preliminary budget, and again, it's not final until next month. So this discussion is going to happen again in a few hours. Is it okay if we move on to some of the other items for now, and we continue this discussion with the full board? Okay. Preliminary high school course approval form. Mrs. Kiesel.
Thank you. Well, what I noticed in my position this year was that the board has approved several courses at the high school level, new courses, and the way they were approved was they were just presented through the high school catalog, course catalog, and what we didn't know were the textbooks that would accompany some of those courses. And so I thought it would be prudent to put a structure in place for the high school course approval process. And that way we're getting the complete picture about the course, about the materials and the text and that kind of thing. And then it goes through the department chairs, the high school principals, myself, and then presented to the Curriculum and Instruction Committee, and then the school board. I sent that attachment to you. I don't know if you had a chance to look at it. I do have paper copies of it if you'd like one as well.
Yeah, I'll take a paper copy. I know the format. So I can transfer over.
So that's in response to the AP classes that were added without knowing the kind of the, I won't say hidden cost, but the cost of the books that were associated with it that we really don't want to talk about. Is that what we're basically what drove this? Okay.
Yes.
In terms of the classes added last year, that curriculum, has that been written?
For class? No. Some of the curriculum has been written. We still need to put aside some funding for a curriculum that still needs to be written for those courses as well.
How were they taught this year without the curriculum?
Well, these are new courses.
Yeah, I'm talking about the ones that we taught this year
that
already.
Curriculum was written.
That was written, yeah. Okay. All right.
So this is just something I thought would really help us to be better planners moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is great.
I'm surprised there wasn't a form already for this type of thing.
Yeah, I was surprised as well.
Good work.
So, that's all that is.
And why would the deadline be October 31st?
Well, it could be whenever you wanted it, but typically that's when buildings are preparing budgets.
Oh, okay.
Yep. No, it's good.
That's budget.
Get ahead of the game.
Thank you.
Okay, so that form looks good. Curriculum implementation plan, Mrs. Kiesel.
Yes. Another thing that I have observed in my function is that we do not have a curriculum implementation plan. We've kind of been just looking at curriculum, I don't know if you want to call it willy-nilly or, but one of my directives was to come up with some type of a plan so that we know what stage we're at in looking at curriculum. So I have a 5-year curriculum implementation plan proposal, and I believe I sent that attachment to you as well, but I also have paper copies. And so each, whatever subject you're working on, will go through a 5-year cycle. And so the first year is analysis, and you can see what analysis is composed of. The second year is the actual design. That's when you actually write the curriculum, select the materials, and review and propose the textbooks for adoption, whatever materials you'll need, and then also look at the technology needs that are included in that phase. Year 3 is the implementation year. And then year 4 and 5 are monitoring year. And you can see the details on the document.
So the only question I have, because I like this a lot, it seems like we're starting to become more planned out, and I like that. But is there any time where you have to hurry up putting something in the curriculum, where you have to make changes on the fly, things like that?
There is, and one example of that was our move from 2 PA core standards.
Right.
And we are having to look at several curricular areas right now to make sure that we're aligned with the standards. So once in a while,
would you try to do this in like a consolidated time frame then, or would you follow this, or would you say, well, let's throw that out the window because we have a mandate or what have you?
Well, hopefully, right, hopefully you would need to do that. I mean, so, I think we're going to be in pretty good shape moving forward.
Okay.
You would prioritize your subjects as to which ones. For instance, right now we're working on math and English language arts this year. Next year we'd like to work on the other 2 core pieces, which are science and social studies. Okay. And then you'd roll in your encore or elective classes, those types of things. And you would obviously be working on more than one. And I would like to do that work throughout the school year so that it's more of a collaborative approach rather than summer curriculum writing, which has been done pretty much in the past year.
Okay.
Along with each of these steps, who, I don't want to go item by item because that'll take us all night, but who does what? And who supervises it all? Is it your office that supervises that all of this is happening? And
yes.
I assume there's documentation that goes along with all of it.
Yes. What we do is typically come up with a core team of curriculum mappers, and they work under my supervision in creating curriculum. And that's 1 year. That's the year we're designing. And then the following year, where you have implementation and monitoring, you have to also include the building principals, teachers, team meetings, those kinds of things. So you have teams of people working on this.
I think it would be very helpful for the board if we could get, maybe not every meeting, but every quarter perhaps, this chart pretty much exactly, and then a list of the courses under each column. So we know at any point in time where a specific course is in the project or in the process, and then if we have feedback, we can provide that. I think that would be helpful for us in terms of a board, just to have some involvement here.
Is there a process then? I know we had some discussion about some of the courses at the high school. Then is there a process where if we want to decide that we're not going to offer classes anymore, that we're going through some kind of system where it says, okay, we've seen the enrollments declining, or is it actually an extracurricular, or is it more of a club item than an actual course? Or
I'm not sure I understand your question.
So, as Mr. Kurtz said, is your book really a class? Is it not? It should not be a class. We have the AP Physics 2. Is that something that should not even be looked at as being offered anymore because there's really no interest in that anymore? So, I mean, is there any kind of process that we go through to actually take classes off our list of curriculum?
Yes, I would think so. I mean, you need to follow, that's a short answer.
It's your
We don't have a lot of
department.
time, right? But I think, there's all kinds of factors that you need to consider, and at the same time, curriculum needs to be a living document. It needs to be an ongoing process that you are looking at it constantly, and it's not just something that you write and put aside someplace.
Yeah, almost like we have this tool here for, I'm guessing, staff to submit a proposed course, and administrators, it's kind of like a phase in. Maybe there should be a phase out almost, or at least a discussion. I guess that comes with the analysis.
I think that comes from the class selection guide and the recommendation from the high school.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I wouldn't want to see us put 5 years of work into writing a new curriculum only to see the course selection guide change, and then all that work goes out the window because we're not offering the course.
Correct.
Doesn't this only apply to 4 subjects?
No.
The whole curriculum process? No? Every single class?
All courses should have a curriculum.
I would think that each year when we offer like an encore, that there's only one section of it, it would just be looked at, evaluated at that time as, how many times you have to rewrite the keyboarding class curriculum?
Well, you wouldn't be rewriting it every year.
Which you would every 5 years in this
You
cycle.
would review it.
You would review it.
Wouldn't necessarily have to be rewritten, but it would definitely be reviewed.
So some things will just streamline through this process, but everything will go through this process.
Right.
And it will only become a budget issue in the year 2, the writing phase? Is that all the systems in place to do the evaluation and implementation?
Well, if you look at year 3 and year 4, providing professional development, we would need to be as creative as we can with that because that does cost money. And but I think we have a lot of in-house talent. Maybe we could share some of that with staff, but that is another piece that's going to require some funding.
Can you give us an estimate? Next year you said you were going to rewrite science and social studies. Can you give us some broad sense of what that would cost to go through this process?
I'm trying to think. I know this year we used a lot of grant funds for curriculum writing, and actually we're hoping next year as well to use some.
So do you have a number on that?
No, I don't.
Could you get us that so we have some sense of how much was the grant for, and did it cover all the curriculum writing? To rewrite math and
this year,
for the math and language arts rewrites that we said you.
Right, we'd be able to get the balance of what was.
Okay, could you? Thanks.
Sure.
And then I guess we can make some assumptions that would be the number that it basically costs us, regardless of the source of the fund.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
The 1 year is where you do decide whether or not you need a text or not. So you have to consider, for the budgeting of that year, whether or not you're going to buy a text to support that curriculum.
Thank you.
All right, is there any further discussion on the chart?
Thank you, Mrs. Keegan.
Could you actually provide us, when you get a chance, actually, no, I do have a question. How does this contrast with what we're doing now, the current curriculum review process?
We didn't really have a process
Okay.
in place.
But there is curriculum that's being written kind of as we speak. Okay.
Yes.
Could you get us just a listing of the curriculum that is being written? The
this
curriculum. Yeah, this year.
Yes.
And if it's on track to be implemented next year, the year after, kind of where things fall transitioning into this, if that makes sense. Or your vision for what's happening now, how that will transfer to what will happen as soon as this goes into effect. And when will this go into effect? Next year. Okay. All right, great. I think we can now move on to item 5, update on civics curriculum. The agenda says update on civics curriculum update. We'll strike one of those updates. This is just a question, I guess, that I have for Mrs. Kiesel and the administration. The committee has discussed it. I know you guys are looking into the curriculum. Where does that stand specifically?
2 years, I believe, right? Ron, isn't it?
History, that's on next year's. Science and social studies is on next year's in the
Oh,
curriculum
that's
cycle.
right. I'm
But
sorry.
yeah, the
It is
science,
next
yeah.
year.
Okay. You're on.
Hello?
Yeah, you're on.
Yes, science and social studies were this year. Next year.
Okay, so really no work has begun in that department yet in terms of changing the civics, or I don't want to say changing, but innovating.
The only work that has been done is I did send out a survey, K through 12, to see how we're teaching civics.
Yep.
You know, is it integrated into different subject areas or?
Good. Can you share the results of that survey with the committee? Because that's something of particular focus, I know, of the committee.
Right now?
No, not right now. No. I mean, when you get a chance. Okay, great. That was all I had on civics. Does anybody else have anything to advise?
Is the plan then for civics and social studies, the science and social studies rewrite to follow this model then? Is that what you're
Yes.
hoping? So will you be approaching the board then with a request for curriculum writing?
Yes.
Okay, so I can just wait for that. You don't have to get me a special number next year. Or last year if you're going to be giving us next year.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right, moving on now to item 6, dual enrollment and internships. Mr. McKnight.
I'll be fairly brief for a change, Mr. Martin. First of all, Mrs. Vice, I wanted to, you had asked me a question last meeting, I told you I'd get back. The dropout, if you want to say rate, I'll give you the dropout count, which is 12 students to date, 5 current seniors, 3 juniors, 4 sophomores. And the reason I want to give you the count as opposed to the rate is because it's a cohort rate, meaning that these current seniors that we have now, this 5, if they dropped out in 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, that will all be added up, and in their senior year, that will be our percentage. So we have historically run at upper 80s, okay, have been our graduation rate, or around 11% dropout rate. So we put some things, we've triaged some things here in the short term. Every counselor, every student that we have who is in danger, close at all, of not passing and graduating, we have met, our counselors have already contacted throughout the year where the warning signs are, but we've actually brought the families in to talk here mostly this week and the past week, to say this is where you are, this is what you need to do, and these are the changes. So for example, a student who has senior release but doesn't look like they're going to graduate, probably shouldn't be on senior release. So we require that they come in now the full time and we get support classes. That's just an example of one. I won't spend the whole time going through all of it, but those are some short-term pieces. We're looking at some credit recovery ideas and things for next year that we're currently working on. And as Keystones, now are the graduation requirement for 2017, how are we providing what we call Keystone prep courses for students who did not successfully pass the course or pass the test?
That's my
this year?
concern.
Yeah, we have a plan.
These kids are going to get discouraged.
There's a plan and support and beyond plan is support for students. So we'll share more of that as we come down the road here.
Thank you.
Okay. So the issue of really dual enrollment. One of the challenges we had at the high school early on, kind of as we've been looking at programming, is most of to teach dual enrollment and get credit at RAC and or Monaco, our teachers would have to have a master's degree in the content area. So, for example, for history, they'd have to have their master's degree in history, not education. So we currently do not have that availability on our staff. We've been able, through negotiating with Monaco, RAC, and now Berks, Penn State Berks was in this, I think it was Friday or Thursday. There's some creative solves we have around this issue. Right now, we got them to agree to let some of our staff teach Gen Ed courses. If they're teaching those courses now and they have a master's degree in education, we'll be able to do that. The issue is about when do we bring this forward. In the late stage of this game, not likely for next year. In the late stages of where we are right now, it's not likely that we will be bringing dual enrollment on for the fall. We'll have a full fleshed out presentation for you of what that looks like going forward. So, but it's going to happen and it's possible, so it's just your willingness to do it. Our teachers will benefit because they can teach it. And then there's some other models where they'll do some evening classes for us and our kids can do that, so can adults. So there's a whole number of pieces going on, but very positive conversations last month on dual enrollment. I think it was last Thursday, I was at the BBEC, which is the Berks Business Education Coalition, and we just missed out timing-wise that there's around a $7,000 grant to build out internships for our students. It's okay. We'll get there. There's only 5 schools in the county doing it. We're in the queue to be the next one if the board wants to go that way. And really, if you follow the logical inclusion to pathways, these students in their senior year will be able to get partnered. And we have the county employment profile projections. They provide all that stuff for you, BBC, and they help support you in the process. Twin Valley has the model. Really, they're the leader on this. So I don't mind co-opting their concepts, and they actually gave us much of their work to build our uniqueness around it. So more to come on that. We've had a lot of positive conversations around that this last month.
Great. Thank you, Thank you very much, Mr. McKnight. That's a dream coming to fruition for me.
Yeah, that's excellent news. So thank you for your leadership there. Anybody have any feedback on the committee to dual enrollments and internships other than what we already had? All right, great. We'll now move on to public comment if there is any. If not, we have the full board meeting coming up. Just please state your name and address.
You want me to turn the microphone on?
Sure, why not?
Oh, you know what? You're not going to be able
I'll be
to.
Laurel Reno, 367 Buckhead Lane. Real quick questions, because I'm sure you guys think through all of this. When we're discussing and looking at courses that could possibly be cut because of enrollment, there is a domino effect. If it is a prerequisite for a higher level class, you've just knocked those 6, 7 students who signed up for that class out of the next higher level class. So it's a 2-year impact. So I just want to make sure that when we're looking at that we're looking and saying, is it a prerequisite for them to do something for their following year? For example, Keystone caused us to change our math order. Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2, we now go Algebra 1, Algebra 2 to Geometry. Great idea, makes lots of sense. Not enough textbooks for every single sophomore and junior to be all in Algebra 2. Not a problem, there's a web-based textbook, we can all log on and look. When the server doesn't crash and you can actually log on to the book. And, I offer Mr. McKnight, the used version of our academic Algebra 2 book is $80. I have one if the district would like that.
Thank you, Mrs. Reno. All right, any further public comment for curriculum and instruction? All right, seeing none, this meeting is adjourned at 7:20 p.m.